all of us working in schools have seen a huge uptick in mental health concerns, and a lot of that has to do with, heavy technology usage. I mean, there's a correlation that found, I remember seeing like a 2017 study that individuals with higher social media usage are more than 3 times as likely to feel socially isolated to compare to those who use less frequently, so the whole thing is knowing, these things, as I kind of in my description to you, like these things were just really designed to connect us, but in some ways, people feel more disconnected than ever before.
Welcome to the podcast, listeners. Today we're joined by Mr. Rad, Superintendent of Carlessie County Public School in Kentucky. From substitute teacher to bus driver to principal and now to a school leader, Tom's journey has always centered on relationships. He believes that schools thrive when leaders stay human first, even as technology becomes a large part of our daily lives. In a world where technology and digital tools promise connection yet often create isolation, Tom focuses on using technology to strengthen and not replace these personal bonds that define a great school. Today, we'll explore what it means to lead with empathy, presence, and a purpose in a digital age. So, welcome to our podcast, Mr. Rad. How are you doing today?
Well, it's great. I would love to tell you that I'm speaking to you from a sunny day in Western Kentucky, but it's quite the opposite. It's a little chilly, it's raining, but that is a good excuse for me to stay inside for a little while and have a conversation with you.
Okay, I think that worked out in our favor because we're really excited for this podcast. So I think I would like to start this podcast with giving our audience a little bit of background. So you've served as a teacher, a coach, a bus driver, and a principal, and now a superintendent. What was it that originally inspired you to enter education, and what is it that keeps you passionate till date?
I mean, let me take you back even a step further to what originally inspired me to become an educator in the first place, because my first degree is in communications, and I really didn't intend on becoming a teacher really into my adulthood years. I really thought I'd see myself more in a corporate setting or something like that, but I just felt like something was missing in the business world, that I didn't have a real purpose. And I thought back to, I have really 2 inspirations as teachers. One was my high school Spanish teacher, Mr. DeLuca. And the thing that made him different and made him special was that personal connection. He was a great teacher instructionally, and we did a lot of really interesting things, and that shaped my instructional approach as a teacher. But really, it was the things that he did before class, after class, in the hallway, and everywhere else that made him special. I felt like I was someone special, and that I felt truly seen and heard in his classroom. So he really inspired me. And then my own wife became an educator, and I saw the value in it through her. I saw how fulfilled she was with her interactions with kids. And so she went with the younger kids, and I went with the older kids. I'm a high school English teacher, and I still consider that the highest calling. In some of my greatest days in this career were definitely in the classroom. I'm a teacher always. I mean, I've been everything from when I actually moved from Florida to here, I had a certification lapse. I had to get my certification transferred from the state of Florida to Kentucky. And so initially when I moved to Kentucky, I was a substitute teacher. So I'll add that to the list of the things that I've done. I've been a substitute teacher and a bus driver, a high school English teacher, a middle school principal, a high school principal, and now a superintendent of a small school district in Western Kentucky. So, what keeps me passionate and connected? That's a really easy question to answer. And it's the kids. I think about one specific interaction that illustrates that point. I had a student who was really troubled, and I had insight that a lot of people don't have, because I would often, in fact, I still drive buses frequently. And I do that for multiple reasons. I love to be with the kids, but I also love to see where they come from. And so I had driven his bus home, and I knew the challenges he had in his home because I dropped him off at that home, and you could tell from outside that his home and his life was not like mine. And so one day we were walking outside the school, and I was still a teacher at the time. And the student turned to me and he said, "Why are you so happy every day?" And I said, "The truth is because I get to see you." And that's the truth. The ability to serve those kids every day, that fills you up, and even the challenges that come along with that sort of empty your spiritual bucket from time to time, they pale in comparison to what the kids pour into you. So, it's all the things. I think a big part of it is having a get to mindset rather than a have to mindset. A lot of the things that I choose to do as the leader, as far as being out by the buses in the mornings, or I've been assisting, we put metal detectors in our elementary school, and I love being there. And on the surface, it looks like I'm checking book bags and things like that. But no, it's moments of connection that happen every day as kids are coming through the door. And it's so valuable. And so it's so great for them to see me as just a person in the school, not just some kind of, I don't know, traveling dignitary or figurehead or something. That's not what you wanted. That's not what any of us got into this for. So just the kids is the ultimate thing that keeps me passionate today and every day, and just sustains you in this career. Cause it can be a challenging one. And so, it has to be something that's continuous and ongoing. It could never be an award or something like that. Those things tarnish, but human relationships never tarnish.
Yeah, and I think that's a very wholesome answer. And I think that incident that you just told us, right? I think you made that student seen, and how you could do that is because there was once a mentor that made you feel seen. So I think what you get is what you pass on. That is very awesome for us to know. Okay, so I'd like to move on to my next question. Moving into the school that you are right now in, what was it that stood you out about the community and its culture when you first arrived here?
Well, I have a pretty spiritual view of my life and my professional life, that doors are open for me. And if I'm just in tune with those things, then I step through those. And this was just a matter of perfect fit. I really wasn't actively looking for a superintendent job. I had a job that I loved dearly and, was in a lot of ways really difficult to leave because I'd poured so much of myself. It's hard for me to even talk about without getting emotional, poured so much of myself into for so many years, but these doors just started opening, and the fit was perfect because this community, it being a small school and it being a really tight-knit school, it was exactly like the type of school setting that I'd come from in my two previous stops as a middle school principal and as a high school principal. I was actually just telling somebody yesterday about my first administrative experience. That was the one that was the most difficult for me to leave because I didn't feel like I'd finished what I needed to do because I was only in that spot for 2 years. You feel much less so when you're in a spot for 6 years or 7 years or something like that. And I know because I'm in tune with what's happening in my life that I'm going to be in this place for a good long time. So yeah, it was just the fit was perfect. It's really familiar. I don't know all these people, but I've seen all of these dynamics before. Everyone knows everyone. A good amount of our teaching staff and school staff actually went to school here and grew up here. So the roots run deep in Carlisle County.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah.
You were talking about like a spiritual thing. You mentioned that, doors opened at the right time for you. It was just a right fit. How else would you describe this journey as a spiritual one, like just, the doors opening for you? How else would you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that in life, if we try too hard, I mean, it's true for everybody. If you're trying to fit round holes into square pegs, things just don't work. And as I get older, I would be foolish to say that I'm the one writing the story, and so I've lived long enough, I'm 50 years old, to see the improbable things that have led me to the places that I've gone. If I think about my move from Florida to Kentucky, it was truly it was a preordained kind of thing. And it really took me being laid low financially to do that, because I left Florida after the financial collapse of 2008. And so my personal finances were greatly affected by the fact that things like my home had lost 50% of its value. And so it was really hard to get by. And so we sold our house, we sold everything that wasn't bolted down, and we took what is really truly a leap of faith to move to a new place and start a new journey. And I know that I wouldn't have the opportunity I have to serve, over 100 employees and to serve 750 kids if I hadn't taken that leap of faith. So it's really an amazing thing to see.
I think, yeah, you kind of have to believe in that higher power and just know that, things are not entirely in your control and just go with the flow, basically. But yeah, that is pretty awesome. You also describe education as extending beyond the classroom. So what does that look like when you lead a whole district?
Well, I think the example I gave of Mr. DeLuca that we talked about earlier, that is a huge part of it. It's you said mentorship. That is a huge part of that, and so there are different mentors, formal and informal, for kids in every school and in every district. One of the most important things, in my opinion, the very most important thing for school safety, for example, is to have a trusted adult that kids are connected to. When I'm working with kids that have an issue or problem, that's invariably going to be my first question is, who's your trusted adult? And I take no offense to that person not being me. And I felt that way as a teacher. I might not be that person, but it's somebody else for that kid. And then it's providing opportunities and looking at school like, okay, so it's not why, but why not? I'll give you an example. We're doing something right now that may or may not work. We have a district next to us that offers a great health sciences program. However, they don't have they are not an area technical school. They are their own technical school that has never accepted students from another school district. And I have a pilot group of students that are going through there. And now we're trying to figure out if the funding function for that is even going to work. And I don't know. It may not. And so the pilot may not work out long term, but we're going to get that group of kids through and give them this amazing opportunity. I really want it to work because it's been fantastic for those kids so far. But it's looking at these things and saying, okay, why not? So it's the impact that you can have in the meantime and in between time, finding opportunities for authentic connection with kids, creating mentorships, both formal and informal, and then challenging the status quo. I think that's really what it's about.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, I would like to come to the topic at hand today. That is the human first tech smart topic that we spoke about earlier. So technology has become an essential in schools, but you emphasize that relationships come first. So what does a human first leadership mean in a digital age like ours today?
Well, I think the biggest piece for it is using tools when appropriate, and figuring that out. There's a lot of talk around digital citizenship, and kids have a hard time managing all of that. And honestly, the parents that are connected to our kids don't manage it particularly well either, and there's a mental health aspect of that, particularly post-pandemic, that is a huge concern to all of us. All of us working in schools have seen a huge uptick in mental health concerns, and a lot of that has to do with, heavy technology usage. I mean, there's a correlation that found, I remember seeing like a 2017 study that individuals with higher social media usage are more than 3 times as likely to feel socially isolated to compared to those who use less frequently. So the whole thing is knowing, these things, as I kind of in my description to you, like, these things were just really designed to connect us, but in some ways people feel more disconnected than ever before. And honestly, I haven't seen a study in this, but it's just my theory that a lot of the troubling things that we see, violence in American culture and in American schools, that the rise of that is what we're seeing is created by that disconnection, because we're less likely to see other people as human beings. Let me connect that to another thought I had many years ago when I was teaching. I would teach, I used a story about Vietnam as an example. And one of the things that they would do during the Vietnam War was they came up with racial epithets to describe the people they were fighting against. And they, in my view, using those terms, using derogatory terms to describe people, is specifically to dehumanize them, because then it makes it possible for you to look through a scope and look through those crosshairs. And when you pull that trigger, what you're doing is you're eliminating that word, but not a person. And I think that can be a big part of what happens through these devices. And so, you can use these devices for human connection, but that doesn't mean that, let me see, when I reach down in my drawer here, that these things like thank you cards don't have their place too. you
Yeah.
know? And so it's knowing it's a tightrope to walk, and it's a balancing act, and it's knowing when. And I'll give you an example of how these things can be good. I use technology to manage my everyday. I feel like I wouldn't have made this meeting with you. I wouldn't show up to anything if I didn't have my many calendars that I distill down into one calendar and that runs my life. But when I came on the scene at Carlisle, because we only have 125 employees, I asked all of my leaders in all the buildings and all the departments to get shirt sizes for everybody so that we could kind of do a beginning of the year theme and kick out the t-shirts and stuff. But I also asked for all their cell phone numbers. So then I took some time in my first days here to load every single person into my contacts. And then what I did to introduce myself was I sent every person an individualized text message over the course of my first days in the summer. And I told them, this is to introduce myself, to tell them how excited I am to meet them in person, and also to make sure that you have my direct line of communication. So now you have my number and you can text me. And that's a really good thing, to be accessible to people. You know, I got a text message this morning. I told you we have monsoons out there. And I had a teacher that sent me a text this morning, and they put in a work order, but they're like, hey, Mr. Rad, I just want you to know my room is flooding. Like it's great to have an open line of contact with people, and also for them to feel like they can bring things large and small to your attention. And so these things can be great. They just, if you lose yourself looking through the world, looking through the screen, then you're going to miss out on an awful lot.
So I think
and the world is moving faster all the time. You know, it's easy to do that.
You very rightfully pointed out that, it's all about creating the right balance. While phones in general can be really isolating, but it can also foster that connection. So like just a very quick text that, your teacher just sent you. It's a very, quick connection sort of a thing. You've also said that cell phones were meant to enhance communication, yet people feel more disconnected than ever. So how has this shaped your leadership approach with students and with staff? I think we already covered the staff bit, but with the students, how do we navigate that here?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example of one thing that I do that is averse to this type of thing, is that I have a superintendent advisory council. And so I do written invitations to them for our meetings, and then we have luncheons together, and it's a no phone zone. And that's when we talk about important issues that are happening in schools, like, quality of instruction, or this month we're talking about vapes and things like that. So next week when I meet with my middle school, and so I send them handwritten invitations to those meetings. And then during those meetings, our phones are down. I mean, I think the easiest way to manage that is to just flip them over, right? And then say to yourself, I'm not going to check that, so I don't know. I don't feel like technology is an impediment during my time interacting with kids, because, I typically am very present and in the moment when I'm doing those. Because like I told you, it goes all the way back to the beginning. It's my ultimate purpose is to be here to serve kids.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Someone really wise, not me, said that schools are built for kids, not for adults. And that sounds really terrible if you're an adult hearing that. But if you filter all your decision making through that idea that schools are kids first, you'll never go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it also keeps us very grounded to the purpose as to why we entered education is just all for the students at the end of the day.
100%.
So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay, leading to my next question. In a world of constant texting and quick responses, right? What does genuine human connection look like for a superintendent today? And which actions do you feel have helped you stay in the present and real with your community?
Well, I mean, there are circumstances, I told you that I wanted everybody to have my number, right? And so those kind of things will pop up where there are times where I do need to deal with things and step out of a room, but that's typically how I'll do that. I'm acutely aware. I have seen even in leadership, for example, I've seen people who are not very present during meetings and things, even with colleagues and things like that. And so I've always been really intentional about making sure I understand that outside perception as well, because I feel like it's very dismissive, and you may be doing something really important. but it's very dismissive to be on your devices all the time during meetings, during conferences. And the strangest thing that happens, particularly as a new superintendent last year, is I will sometimes find myself in those situations, and it's almost like a form of FOMO related to technology, where I look at other people and I see what they're doing. And then I think to myself, should I be doing that? Because I see them on Outlook and they're diving into their emails, and I think, should I be tending to my emails? Or I'll even see somebody working a spreadsheet or something, and I'm like, man, I need to get on it. But that's not true. Really, the people who are presenting in front of you, even if they're 100 yards away, standing at a podium, those are real human beings, and they can look out over a crowd and see the backside of laptops and phones and wonder. I mean, as a teacher, there was nothing. Everybody has their hot buttons and their issues, and there was nothing in the world that bothered me more than a moment where I was standing in front of a class delivering a lesson and thinking to myself, am I the only one listening to this? Am I the only one engaged right now? It would really make me feel sad and frustrated. Many years ago, I was teaching a course. I led a class in Florida called AVID, and it was specifically designed for students who would be the first in their family to go to college. And it was around study skills and note taking and growing personal skills and leadership and those types of things. And so my high school traveled around Orange County in Orlando and went to other high schools to present the program to school staff. And the most ironic thing happened. The students were teaching and the teachers were on their phones. So we would travel to other schools. I'd stand in the back of the room. My kids were presenting at the front of the room. And I looked at teachers looking at their phones. And I thought to myself, well, you're a teacher. You wouldn't be very happy with your students if they were doing that to you. And so, even adults are not as self-aware as they think, and these things are very, they're enticing. There are a million important things going on here.
Yeah, but I think it's all about just that connection and just even being respectful for that matter. Just, if there's a human being, may it be a student, a presenter, even a teacher, if someone's out there presenting their piece, the least the audience can do is just put their cell phones down, just listen and be present in that moment. And yeah, I think it's pretty ironic when teachers themselves were doing that. So, I mean, if the kids are still adapting to it, no wonder why. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we were talking about how cell phones can be distracting and technology can distract us a little. But schools often do chase new trends, right? So how do you decide what actually supports learning and connection rather than complicating it?
There are things that you can use that are vetting, that you can see what works and what not, like ISTE and, what's that other one? The ISTE seal of approval. I know there are other ways to vet, but really the best way is through our people. We have technology leaders, and, invariably there are free versions of softwares and things like that, or you can get a trial version from the vendor and try it out. So, I always just listen to my people. I've seen, school districts have different approaches as far as how fast they push the pedal of innovation, and some are quicker to adopt and some are a little bit slower. And I'd say that we're a little bit more on the slow side as far as adoption is concerned. But I just always we have designated technology leaders in our district, and I take their word on those things, and I make sure that the teachers have buy-in first, because honestly, you can make purchases and you can try to push things top down, but if you don't have the buy-in at the grassroots level, they're not going to implement the technology. It's just not going to happen. And I think after the pandemic, we did so much through Google Classroom and things like that, when we were forced away from our schools, that when we came back, the pendulum swung pretty hard back the other way, because they missed so many of the paper pencil type approaches, when really the best approach is somewhere right in the middle. That middle porridge is the best, so that's kind of how I figure it out. I know that I'm not smarter than the people who are in the classrooms, particularly because I know I've been out of the classroom long enough that I'm a dinosaur. When I think about the technology that was cutting edge, that I was proud of that I was doing back in the day. I had my computer hooked up to my projector. Well, let me take you all the way back. I'll tell you about my greatest innovation. My greatest innovation was initially I was teaching from an overhead projector with a light bulb in it, right?
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
The projectors that used to.
That had a fan in them, and they have a light bulb, and it illuminates a platter, and you write on the thing, and it projects it behind you.
Oh, damn, I had no idea. Okay.
Okay, this is very old in technology, right?
Okay.
So the first actual digital computer type projector I got, we didn't even have those installed in every classroom. I had to check it out from the library on a cart and wheel it into my classroom.
Okay.
I then figured out at one point that I could take individual clear slides and put them in a laser printer and type and then put pictures on them or whatever and print them up in a laser printer, and I could lay those on the low-tech projector. I was so proud of myself. But we've come light years from that. And then, toward the end of my career, I was proud that, there was something called Air Squirrels, and Air Squirrels allowed me to connect my iPad to my MacBook that was connected to my projector. And so I could walk around the room with my iPad and do lessons in real time. This is like the Surface many years before the Surface. But, that's old school, and things have really, catapulted forward, and we've come a long way. And those are all really great things.
Yeah, and I think adapting to those things really matter because they also do enhance the experience of the students as well.
Sure.
So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm going to switch up my next question a little around mental health since I'm a psychologist as well, and I'd love to know your take on this. You very rightfully pointed out that things after pandemic and because of the technology, mental health wise have gone a little down. How do you personally take care of your mental health in the digital age, and how do you promote your staff to take care of theirs?
Yeah, self-care is a big deal, and it's really challenging. And everybody has to find something, the thing that fulfills them the most. Not everybody is for yoga, and that's sort of it's like it's really, to me, it's about doing the things you love most with the way you love most, and oftentimes with the people you love most, and that's kind of the secret of self-care. In my case, since you're asking about me personally, I do things on a schedule, I live my life on a schedule, and technology ties into that too, because, I send out Wednesday inspirational messages for my leadership team. And so I keep a constant Wednesday wisdom thing, like a bank of them going. And I have these little nuggets of wisdom to deploy. But the secret is it's not for them. It's for me. It's for me to hear and for me to share. And then on Saturday mornings, my wife, the way that she feels, she charges her batteries. She likes to sleep in on Saturdays. I'm not that way. So I'm not taking away from time from my spouse, but I'm a cyclist. And so I'll get out on a bicycle every Saturday morning. I'm always watching the most important thing is what will weather be on Saturday morning, because my main thing is I would love to get out on my mountain bike and go ride 15 miles in the woods where it's peaceful, where I can reflect, where I can stop for a moment and look out over the lake and charge up my batteries. And the most amazing thing happens, when I have professional challenges, when I have riddles I can't solve and knots I can't untie, when I'm off there and I'm in the woods and I'm exercising, all of a sudden those things become clear. And I'm able to solve life's big problems. It has to do with neurotransmitters, I'm sure. Serotonin levels, certainly. Those things help me think more clearly. Let me tell you about another thing that I did when I was a principal that is also, it looks like it's for everybody else, but it's really for me, was I put in a system of positive office referrals for teachers and staff to write kids up, not for the things that they're doing wrong and send those to the principal, but for the things that they're doing right. And so I would get those Google Forms and I would hand out an arbitrary award. They got a candy bar, but it was not about the candy bar. It was never about the candy bar. It was about those forms. And at the end of the day, I would make positive parent contacts and making those phone calls to those parents to tell them the things that their kids did right. on the surface, it looks like it's for the parents, but it really wasn't. It was really for me because I would have to make so many difficult phone calls during the day and have so many challenges that came my way that it guaranteed that I ended every day on a positive note. And that system created that self-care. That was a way for me to end my day in a positive way. And so there's no prescriptive way. I'm not going to assume that everybody needs to mountain bike or exercise the same way. But if it's, if it's a shopping trip, or if it's, Sudoku, or if it's whatever it might be, if it's solving your Wordle every single day, whatever it is that makes your day a good one and ends it in a positive way is for you. So I would be that would be a lot of hubris on my side to say I have the prescription. There are a lot of books written on that kind of thing. I mean, in fact, there was a self-care book that was recommended to me that I gave to my leadership team last year. And it was an abject failure because it was written at a PhD level. And it was about all of these lofty things that we felt that we couldn't live up to. And so I told everybody, I was like, hey guys, I got 45 pages into this self-care book. It was called Outlive. And I was like, no, Outlive is not for me. And they're like, yeah, thank you. I can't, it's too dense for me too.
Yeah. I mean, you're very right in pointing out that, mental health and self-care looks very different for everyone. And what works for you may not work for everyone. And I think the one thing that you mentioned, just going on a shopping spree, I think that's my way of taking care of my mental health at times. So that's pretty awesome. I'm going to move our shift to another topic that's been buzzing in the education industry. That's AI in education. So as districts begin to explore what AI can do, what mindset shifts do school leaders need to adopt to make sure that AI supports rather than overwhelm educators?
Well, I mean, the educators can use these tools, and I think that we forget that. And the biggest shift in mindset is it's all cheating. I think, when you think about it, when Google came around, everyone said, wait a minute, kids can look up anything that they want to. They'll have access to all the content. Well, it's cheating. Well, now we don't see Google that way. So I think time will change perspectives around AI. I think it's going to take sort of, I don't know, you have to get to some critical tipping point where everyone says, okay, this is not going away, and I know it's not going away. How do we integrate this into our lives? A couple years ago, when I was a principal, I did a professional development for my staff, and I entitled it was AI, they're using it, why aren't we? And what I did was, I got into OpenAI, and I mirrored it on a screen for them, and I started taking requests on lesson plans and started typing in, okay, I need a 5-day lesson plan on photosynthesis and growth of plants and how that occurs in the spring, and the grade level and all of those things. And I would type those things in and they were just astonished as it was generating lesson plans for them, And so that's a perfect example. Actually, I'll give a shout out to Henry County Schools in Kentucky. Their superintendent sent out an email to all superintendents this past week wanting to know what we're all doing around AI. And he shared a Google Gemini evidence-based lesson planner that they had built in their district. And so my plan is to share that with my leadership team at our December 3rd meeting. Because, this is a huge benefit. And if you show them that, it's not all negative. So it's unburdening them to show them, okay, this is not something that you need to fight. We need to utilize these tools so that we can free up time for other things.
And I think understanding and exploring AI by themselves, when teachers do that, they'll become a little more sensitized to it, and then they'll maybe have a better perception of it. So that does actually make a lot of sense. But when we imagine classrooms 5 years from now, right? What human qualities do you believe will still be essential in the age where AI has probably, taken over the most mundane tasks? What human skills would be necessary then?
Okay, so you're talking about, 5 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, what are the qualities that we're going to still be focusing on in schools? I know that schools are really focusing more on, rather than content, because of things like Google and AI, rather than focusing on facts. These characteristics, skills, and dispositions is a huge area of focus for all schools. And a lot of schools are doing work around what's called portrait of a learner. You familiar with the term?
Not really, no. Could you just...
Okay. And I'm even going to say something kind of is going to make me sound like a high school principal. But honestly, the original title for this portrait work was Portrait of a Graduate. And I honestly think that Portrait of a Graduate describes what it is better than Portrait of a Learner. I just know there was pushback because people were saying, well, no, we need to focus on these things at all schools, not just, but really the concept is this. So let's scroll it back to Portrait of a Graduate. Portrait of a Graduate, the original idea behind that was, these are all the things we need to put into kids, the citizens we need to create by the time they're finished in our school district. So what are those skills and dispositions that we need to impart into kids to make sure that they are what you would say, secondary, post-secondary ready? How do we make them ready for life? So the portrait work is a big part of the work that's being done in most school districts in Kentucky, and I think nationally as well. And we're putting in a new accountability system, and a lot of what's going to be called local accountability is built around this portrait of a learner work. And so schools are partnering with their parents and with their community to say, what is it that you want us to do? What is the type of student you want us to create so that they're ready to go into the community and serve in whatever capacity, in whatever job or military or collegiate endeavor, whatever they're going to be doing? How do we make them ready? And a lot of those characteristics are very similar from school to school. We all want effective communicators. And that's one of the things that we hear, when we hear that soft skills are lacking. Direct communication is one of those things. I mean, we see it in our own new emerging teachers. The most difficult thing for them is not to send an email or go into Parent Square and send a message to parents, but picking up the phone and calling them, that's challenging. That's challenging for young people because they're not experienced with that kind of direct communication. So effective communicator and what that looks like, spoken word, written word, direct human contact that I've been talking about. Reflective collaboration. How do I work effectively with others? And you think about, at the elementary world, if they're doing station teaching and the kids are working in small groups and those groups are rotating, how do I work within a group of 5? And how do I work within a group of 20? What does that look like? Being an engaged learner, being engaged in what I'm doing. If I have voice and choice in my lessons, am I choosing wisely? Am I finding things that interest me? And am I growing and developing in those interests? Citizenship, being a champion for others. We call it personal champion. Am I expecting the best of myself and am I demanding the best of others? And then responsible contributor in everything that we do. So these are kind of the characteristics that we're trying to grow. And these are the things that our community wants.
Yeah, rightfully so, because again, these are skills these are tasks that AI could never take over. Communication, just collaboration, things AI could never take over humans, right? So building these skills right from the beginning in students is very essential. Makes a lot of sense. On to my last question. This is not really coming from me. This is a question that another leader has shared for the next leader. We have this little segment towards the end. So the question that has come up from you, was there a moment that stands out in your mind that has made a strong impact on how you lead today?
Yeah. And I've shared this story with other people, and I actually shared it at my opening day this year, and it's an interesting and sad one in some ways, but the outcome was okay. There was a moment when I was still a teacher, and I was supervising a student parking lot, and one of our students was hit by a vehicle in the parking lot. I really can trace my leadership journey to that moment because of the lens through which I saw that event, and then my focus on school safety being the most important thing that I can do as a school leader is to make sure to set the stage. If kids are not safe and everything that means, we focused on emotional safety in a lot of ways today, but if they're not physically safe at the same time, if you don't put all the measures in, then then we're failing, and fortunately that student, he survived the incident. Miraculously, we talked about my spiritual journey. There are no earthly explanations for why his injuries were not more profound. I cannot explain it. But in that moment, I thought it could have been the end of this child's life. And the other thing that fits perfectly into our conversation, I watched back the video of that event over and over, and he was looking at his phone as he was walking across a parking lot, and another student was driving in, and the sun was directly in his view.
Yeah.
And so that student couldn't see very well because the sun was on the windshield of that truck. And so that's why that truck hit that kid as he was pulling through the parking lot. He wasn't going very fast, but I was the adult on duty that morning. I was the person who made the 911 call. I was the person who realized that it took 14 minutes for the paramedics to arrive. I was the person that felt that there were too many people in the parking lot, including school staff, that didn't need to be there. And so all of that shaped my path forward. And I was also, for whatever reason, I'm a person that when things become tense, I relax. And so I was able to manage that. And so I learned that about myself. And so that helped me know that, when the most difficult things happen, I do have the capacity to lead in those situations. So it all traces back to a day as a teacher. I'm in a parking lot and a kid gets hit by a car.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that, that kid made it out. And I mean, it's because of such difficult experiences that, we learn a lot of things going ahead. And I think even this podcast has been a lot more eye-opening for me in terms of just being present and just like leaving my phone aside for a minute. And I think our listeners would also have a very similar experience listening to this. So just thank you so much for taking out the time and just sharing such beautiful insights with us today. And
Absolutely. It was a joy. Yeah, it was a real joy speaking with you. You're very good at what you do, and you make me feel, you make your guests feel really comfortable.
Thank you so much for that.